I'm Eric from Alabama.
And I'm Gerry from Boston, Massachusetts. It's another Sunday podcast. Hey, Eric, how are you?
I'm doing well, Gerry. How are you?
I am better than I deserve. Hey, man, this is episode number 10. This is sort of like an anniversary. Yeah, did you ever think that we would be airing our 10th episode?
Well, I mean, anything's believable now.
We're in February. Where's 2021 going?
I don't know. I mean, you expect me to read the future or something?
I do.
Man, stuff could happen in February that's like, I mean, compared to how 2020 or 2020 went, I mean, February could happen and we're all like, what the?
I saw a great meme the other day. It was a picture of Marty McFly and Doc at the in the Back to the Future in the DeLorean. And the caption on the meme was, "Don't set this mother to 2020." Thought it was kind of fun. And so how true is that, right? Well, episode 10, and what better way to bring a guest on to episode number 10? You have asked me both on the air and off the air about various trips that I've taken or things that I've done or fun things that I've done. And tonight, we have a friend of mine who I met. I'll have to ask him how many years ago. It's got to be close to 20 years now. Who I spent a lot of time traveling with, usually in the month of February, down the Daytona 500. And then we did a few NHL trips together. I think we did some baseball trips, and we might have some stories for you. So I thought I'd let you, I thought I'd give you your wish and bring Mike on, and we can talk about some of the things that we did. So, with that said, let's bring in my good friend, Mike McCoy. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
How are things down in Louisville, Kentucky?
Cold and gray and depressing, unfortunately.
It's the same here in Alabama.
I still have to get used to this cold in Kentucky and cold in Alabama thing. I mean, we get into the teens here and the 20s.
So, yes, cold for us, I mean, is probably a nice spring day for you guys, but like a high of 38, I think, today, and lows in the 20s, and that's too cold for me.
Oh, 38 is, are you kidding? That's t-shirt and short weather here.
Not here.
People out there jogging and stuff. It's awesome. So, thanks for taking the time. This is probably the only way I could get you to chat. You've been busy and whatnot with work and everything else going on in your life. So I finally was able to corral him to join us. So thought it would be, Eric thought it would be kind of fun to kind of talk about some of the experiences we had and everything from traveling to working together, doing the photography thing. And it was all kind of fun. So we kind of go back. I was trying to think today, how many years it's been? Has it been 20 years or close?
So it's been almost 20. So it was actually right after 9/11 in 2001 when we first met.
Okay.
So we're coming up on 20 years later this year.
So how did y'all meet?
So I worked at the time worked for UPS. I work for UPS now, but and Gerry worked for Compaq, and they outsourced some business to us and set up, I think back then they called them supplier fulfillment centers. And I was the one that ran that small business unit within our warehouse, and Gerry was one of the reps they sent out from Compaq to kind of stand us up and teach us how to use their system and get familiar with the product and all that good stuff. And I don't know. It was weird. We just started like we go to lunch every day together, and then you stayed there. I think you were there for at least 4 weeks, maybe longer, but just had a lot in common. Got to hang out at work, outside of work, and formed a pretty good relationship and friendship while he was in town. And we just typically when in my career at UPS, like meet people that come in and help us out from other organizations and stuff, and we're cordial while they're there, but we don't typically stay in touch much after the fact. But Gerry, shortly after he left, we kind of kicked off a tradition we had for quite a while, and he was like, "Hey, we're both in a NASCAR. Let's you want to go to Daytona in February?" And there's way more to it than that, obviously, over the last almost 20 years. But like that's kind of the rest is history, so to speak. We just stayed in touch ever since, and there'll be times we don't talk for a while, but then when we do talk, it's like we just talked the other day. So.
And the only difference is instead of a 10-minute conversation, we 4, 5, 6 hours. It goes into the wee hours of the morning. So yeah. he had me when I met him, as he said at UPS, it was, "Hey, you want to go to lunch today?" And listen, if it's free, it's for me, and especially when it comes to food. So that's kind of where I kind of we started this friendship. So, but it was. Yeah, so it started with Daytona, and then it just kind of expanded from there.
So talk about y'all's trip to Daytona, and then maybe some other road stories that y'all got.
Well, there's been I don't know how many times we actually went to Daytona. The first one was kind of a whirlwind. Like I think you flew from Boston, I flew from Louisville. We met in Newark, flew to Orlando. We crammed. We did the hospitality thing that first year. We would went go big or go home. We pretty much. I think we kind of thought it was going to be a one-shot deal, so we tried to get everything in that we could. So we did the hospitality, and the $500 cold Danish for breakfast on Saturday, and
warm beer. That's what it was. It was a cold Danish and a warm beer for $500 a piece. Yeah. Yeah. But it was an experience. I mean, Daytona, 200,000 people at the time when they had the full capacity, front stretch, back stretch. We sat on the back stretch, which was the best seats, I thought, for the years that we had those tickets. And what amazed me, it was my first NASCAR race. I have a couple of other friends who were really into NASCAR. And so I knew a little bit about it, but the actual first race I ever went to was with Mike, and it was in Daytona. And I was amazed that here we are with 200,000 people. Everybody's drinking, and everybody is in love with everybody. You go around in Boston, you can't put 2,000 people together, give them a beer, and not have somebody beating the shit out of somebody. But for 200,000 people to be sitting there and not only just drinking, I mean, bringing in at that time, before they had all these restrictions, you could wheel in a keg of beer, essentially, right? I mean, you could bring whatever you wanted into these places. You didn't have to buy their beer; you could bring your own. And your own cooler and things. It was just crazy. It was amazing to me, and so I fell in love with the sport at that time, watching the people and the whole just the whole experience, and of course being in Daytona in February was great because most of the time we were down there it was pretty decent weather, but we did have some years that was not pleasant.
Yeah, we've rained out on a couple different occasions, which there's a good story for that one. That's the changing in the rest area bathroom one. But I mean, I remember that one year we went down. I can't remember the specific year, but I think that's when we stopped flying and started driving. And I did not pack for the weather that we had. I packed for the weather that I thought we'd have. And I mean, I think it was like 35 degrees was the high, and there was like 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and I think I paid, I don't know, like $25 for a toboggan or a beanie. I'm not sure what they call them up north.
Hats.
And, hats. And, like $15 for these janky like NASCAR knit gloves that, I mean, still didn't even keep my hands warm, and like froze the entirety of the weekend. It was just miserable. Like I had on all the clothes that I pretty much had brought with me, and then bought a few extra layers, and it was brutal. So brutal.
Mike, are you from the South originally?
So I was born in Ohio. My dad worked for the railroad, so we moved around a little bit as I was a kid. So I moved to northern Indiana when I was 8, and then moved to Kentucky when I was 12. So I've pretty much been in Kentucky now for the last 28 years. I had a brief stint in Tennessee, but still right on the border of Tennessee and Kentucky. So yeah, that's about as far south that I've lived is Western Kentucky.
Okay. I was wondering because you mentioned the cold, and a lot of times I hear, especially people from up north or out west, the hunting here in Alabama is pretty popular, and sometimes people from out of state will come hunting here or whatever. But I hear stories about people from up north, and they come down to Alabama, and they talk about how cold it is in the wintertime. And because of there's a lot of humidity down here, and that stuff just seeps through your bones.
Oh yeah.
And it gets pretty cold. So I'm sure y'all experience some of that over there in Kentucky. So
yeah, well, like I'm right here, like we're in the Ohio Valley, so it's like the allergy / humidity capital of the world. It's like swamp ass is like swamp ass season runs from like middle of May till the middle of September.
Yeah. That's the weather, the wet, and that's the thing. Being cold sucks, but being wet and cold, that's a different story. So, so y'all have mentioned the changing clothes story, but please elaborate and go into detail.
Yeah, so this was one of those days, one of those weekends where I think it was fairly hot. We had thunderstorms the whole weekend, and I'm not sure if they canceled the race the day before or if that was the good day, but on the day of the 500, we knew we were going to get into some weather. This typically when we went to Daytona, we would spend either the entire week. I tried to spend a whole week, take just a week vacation and spend it in Florida. And then there were times when you, Mike, were able to come down and spend the week, or you'd spend 3 or 4 days, and we'd get to do some other stuff, Disney or Universal or whatever we did. And this particular weekend was one of those that you had to do a hit and run.
Oh no, it was a definite down and back. I think I one-wayed it out of Nashville, I think, on Friday. I think. And it might have even been Saturday, but I'm pretty sure it was Friday. So it was like a one-way down. I think we weren't planning on going the race on Saturday, and then it was basically we were going to the 500 on Sunday, and then when it was over, you were driving. We were leaving from the track essentially to drive home, and you were going to drop me off on the way because I like I said, one-way flight. I didn't have a return ticket.
Right. So the goal, the plan was actually to see the race and then hop in the car and take him back. It was about a 10-hour drive from Daytona, I think, to Nashville. And then I was going to make my way up through Tennessee and into Ohio. And I have a bunch of friends that I've met over the years. And I said, I'll just make this one big swoop. So I won't spend a week in Florida this year, but what I'll do is I'll drop him off and then I'll just make my way up to some friends in Ohio and New York and kind of make my way down back home. Well, we had a thunderstorm, and they evacuated the track. And this was more of an electrical storm than it was a thunderstorm. So if you can imagine, roughly 100,000 people on the backstretch. And the way they did this was when the race was over, you would go down to these queues to load into these school buses, which would take you to the parking area. Well, they wanted everybody out because we're sitting in metal stands and there's lightning striking everything around us. So they make this announcement that for your safety, get out. It's essentially what they said. So here we are in these queues, and it is just, the skies just opened up. And I mean, we could see the lightning, so it was like flash bang. It was like hitting trees, feet from us or whatever. At least it sounded like that. And now we get into this queue. We are absolutely drenched, waiting for buses to pull up. And of course, we don't get in the first line. And what did it, 20 buses, 30 buses, Mike? Tons of buses. We didn't make the first round of buses. And now you got people getting all irritated and trying to cut and all this other crap. It became a shit show. We finally get on this bus, get off the bus. Now we have to go across this. I think it's a farm where they kept horses, or an area where they kept horses or cows or some shit. And it's all grass and it's mud and it's flooded.
Yeah.
And we are drenched, and all I could think of was another time we had this issue. We're going to get stuck in the mud here in this thing, because I think we had an issue where we almost did get stuck one time. But that's all I'm thinking of, and not get struck by lightning, because we're in a wide open field, surrounded by trees. The chances of us getting struck were pretty good. And we weren't parked near where the bus, of course, the bus dropped us off a half a mile from where we parked. So now we're trying to sludge through the mud to get to the car, and we're just absolutely drenched. And I don't remember if I had my car, if I rented a car for this trip. I think I had my car. And we get in there, we're absolutely soaked. So now I got to get him back to Nashville by a certain time because of the rain, the race was delayed. And I'm hoping they're going to cancel the race, because I had already decided I'm not going to go up to Nashville in Ohio, because Nashville was like 10 degrees. Ohio had a blizzard. I said, there's no freaking way that I'm going to spend my vacation going from what was like 85 degrees to 0. So I said, I'm going to drop him off, get a hotel for the night, turn around and come back and see the race on Monday, because they certainly are going to cancel this race. Well, they didn't. So we ended up listening to the race on Sirius XM all the way on the ride home. We just, and Mike will tell you, he does not like to be wet.
No, my least favorite thing. I don't do water rides with great enthusiasm. I do not like being in the rain. So we got in the car, and then of course everybody's leaving. So it's not like we just got in the car and got on the road. So we had to sit in traffic, to get out. And I can't remember how many miles up the road it was, but we finally saw this rest area and pulled off. And like a lot of other people had, and I mean, I got my suitcase out of Gerry's trunk, rifled through it and found some clean clothes. And we went into the bathroom and we're like, I don't know, like air drying our pits at the, and just cause you talk about being the cold and the wet, just it felt like I was never going to get dry. We just sat there and got rained on for so long. And, so changed in a bathroom stall in a rest area in Florida somewhere. Yeah. And then ended up listening to the race on the ride home, which was also kind of funny because my mom knew we were down there and she was keeping tabs on me on the trip. Well, I think you might actually been streaming the thing from your phone on your X app. So every time you pause to take a phone call or answer a text message or something, it would pause the broadcast. So we ended up getting a delay. And then, so we probably had probably all in maybe ended up being a 10-minute delay. Right. But I remember, Junior who was my driver at the time. He had been leading the race and was running a good race. And I remember, the finishes at Daytona are always typically tense, whether fabricated or not. But we were really into the broadcast, and my mom texts me, and I happened to look over my phone, and she's like, "He did it! He won!" And I'm like, "Well, we can off now since we know how it turns out." So, but just a funny side note to that trip. But yeah, I think we got to Nashville at, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning.
Something like that. It was early.
And I think you dropped me off at my car at the airport. I don't even think I stayed at the hotel. I think you went
from your car to work. I believe that's what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
And I walked into a hotel room, still like not drenched, but just you could tell that I was tired. And I just went and I said to the guy, if you don't have a room, give me the presidential suite. I know he's not coming today, so I'll stay. And they had a room, and I didn't care what it was going to cost. And I went up and went to bed, and then I got up the next morning and drove back to Florida, and I was booking my hotel because I didn't have a hotel in Florida because I had planned to go to these other states. So I'm on the road in my phone, pulled over in a rest area for those of you listening, booking hotels back in Florida so I could stay the rest of the time that I was there. I thought it was a great idea. We'll just get changed in a rest area. That'll be perfect. Not little do we know when we got there, 5,000 people are getting changed in the rest. So we had to wait for that. And then get in my nice dry clothes. I get back into my car and it's soaked. So I'm still
put dry clothes on, back in a wet seat.
Yeah, so my back and my ass are still wet. So, but that was one to remember.
I think probably all time just shit show of a trip, and it wasn't even necessarily the trip that was a shit show, but it was like me and you, I think Don and Matt. I think we stayed like in Lake Mary, maybe. That's right. It was the year W. Bush came to the race.
Oh, right.
And we got up and left at the normal time. And I think we got maybe a half an hour from the track and like hit standstill traffic because they had diverted everything away from the track.
Yeah, there were two issues there. That was another one where it had torrential rains days before, so the normal parking area that we would go into, which was so much better than the main parking area, because you could just jump on a bus and you're right out onto I-4. They closed it because it was a mud puddle, and so we got diverted to another track. So that plus the fact that the president was coming. They had all sorts of roads closed for security purposes. So I think we just sat down we just got to our seats during the national anthem. So I don't think we missed the start of the race, but is that the race? Is that the race we left early? Also, is that the same race?
Yeah. I think it might have been.
And missed all the fun?
Yeah, like there ended up being like I think we left early. I don't know if we stopped and ate, but like by the time we got back to the room, like the race still wasn't over. And I think that was when like Clint Boyer ended up going across the finish line on his roof. But that's the trip. Like I said, I think I was asleep in the back seat of the car, and like we were in the stop and go traffic, and I wake up to Don. Like, I mean, not just in hysterics, but like he couldn't breathe. He was laughing hard because the old guy, like, had to relieve himself, I guess. And of course, we're on like a 2-lane road, so he like steps over the barrier to take a piss, and just slid down the hill and just disappeared. Like the funniest part about it was like he left so fast that like his hat like stayed where he was.
It was
like an eternity, and it just floated in the air and then fell.
It was like a Looney Tunes cartoon because we're sitting there. Dawn and I are watching this guy walk to this thing. I'm like, he's not going to go over that because this was. I thought it was an overpass, but it was some sort of like a gully separating north and southbound lane of I-95, and he stepped over, and like Mike said, I said, "Oh man, this is not gonna go well." And next thing we know, he's gone, and his hat was a couple inches above his head. And that was just, I mean, this poor guy could have been dead. We couldn't have helped him. We were just in hysterics. Of course, we see people getting out of their cars and his friends and everything. Then the guy comes up. He's fine. He's not hurt, thank God. But he has a white shirt on, and he is now covered in mud or whatever the hell he fell into down there. And that we just could not stop laughing.
And it didn't help. It didn't help. Like Don, I mean, like he was crying, like with just laughing so hard he was crying. And like he just, I don't know. It's like when it's a classic case of one of those things. It's like when something's funny and you laugh, and you just keep laughing about it. Like it's been, I think it was even a half hour later. Like we're still in the car, but like Don,
still laughing now, and this is 15 years later. I mean.
And we would just start laughing again for like 15 minutes. So yeah, that one was a nightmare. I mean, we had a lot of uneventful trips too. I mean, you know, roll in, roll out, usually good race, good weather. But yeah, we've definitely had our share of stories just going to that one event.
And we did other tracks too. We've been to Talladega together. I think in the initial what was called the Bush race, I think at the time, wasn't it, where the 43 cars started out and like lap 2 there was like 10 cars left or some crap?
Yeah, well that's the trip that it was so friggin' hot that day. And this, like we actually moved our seats. Like we were more like the Talladega Tower or something down on one end, and like so many people left after the wreck. Like we moved down like close to the start finish line. And I don't think I had any sunscreen on. And I drank a lot of beer. And like, I just remember like we got back to the hotel and I took a shower and I got under the covers and shivered all night because I was so sunburned. And I think that might have been another trip. Sunday after the race, I think we had to skedaddle home. I think you checked into your hotel, took a shower, and checked back out.
That was the rate. That's when I completely forgot about Central Time versus Eastern Time. And I had a flight. This was one of these, for me, it was a fly-in, fly-out deal. And I flew in and out of Louisville. So I flew into Louisville, picked him up. We went down to Talladega, and I forget where we stayed. Somewhere, I don't even know if we stayed in Alabama. But we stayed somewhere and checked out of the hotel, went to the race, and then said, "Okay, I gotta make it back to the race, to the airport to come back because I had to work the next day for some reason, and I completely forgot about the time difference going back. So I think I had like a first flight out, 5:30, 6:30 a.m. flight out of Louisville. Figured it would be okay. Even though I forgot about the time, but if you've ever been to a NASCAR race, and being in Alabama, if you've ever been to Talladega around race day, Eric, there's just traffic for hours and hours and hours, and you literally sit in this traffic. And normally we would sit in a parking lot and wait for it to clear out. We'd sleep, listen to the radio, the post race, whatever. This was one of those. I had to be in the car and out, and this was like a 4 or 5 hour traffic jam to get onto the main highway to get back up to Kentucky. I literally dropped Mike off, checked into the hotel at the airport. I didn't take a shower. I took a dump and went back downstairs and checked out. And the guy's like, "Didn't you just get in?" I went, "Yep, got to go catch my flight," and took the shuttle over to the airport. Yeah. So it was one of those crazy trips. And that was just Daytona. So we did some other crazy too. We did NHL tours and baseball, and
I don't know. We did our East Coast baseball trip. I think we saw the Yankees, the Orioles, the Red Sox. I think that was on the East Coast trip. Might have been one more game, but then the West Coast trip. I think we followed. It might have just been a couple games. I think with the Red Sox were on a West Coast swing, but I remember we were at the Angels game where Ortiz got tossed and like threw like half a dozen baseball bats out of the dugout.
It was fan appreciation day, I think it was, at this game, and he got mad at the umpire or something. He got thrown out of the game, and he threw like all the bats at the umpire or onto the field or something. It was fan appreciation day, and David Ortiz is fantastic. He was a great player, of course, but he did so much for the city of Boston and people, and just to see him in that mood was kind of crazy. You were with us for the tornado in Calera, right?
Yep, we were like hot side of our tent, trying to hold it down. The wind come whipping through there.
Yeah, that was scary. I grabbed a hold of the tent to try to hold it down, and it lifted me up. Now, you need a crane to lift me, and the wind did it. So that's when I knew we needed to evacuate. Thankfully, nobody got hurt. The whole circus tent collapsed at that one. Were you with us for the floods? And were you at the floods in Union, Illinois?
No, I think I missed that one.
Okay. So it seems like everywhere I went, there was some sort of a disaster going on. Or we had earthquakes in California, tornadoes in Calera, Alabama, and we had another tornado somewhere else.
Well, we had the remnants of a hurricane in Lebanon that one year, Lebanon, Ohio.
Right.
And that's when, like, that tree limb snapped. And, like, I think that one actually took out the souvenir tent at that one.
Yep.
That was a nightmare, too. You had people, running everywhere trying to, I don't know, that was a chaotic scene, just with everything flying around. And then, like I said, I just remember this huge tree branch just snapped and fell right into the tent, and people, I don't know, it was just like a melee. So yeah, you've had your share, we've had our share of disaster Thomas events too.
That we have.
Like all the stuff we've done, like I think the hockey trip was that was probably the one I enjoyed the most. Doing the trains and all public transportation, and like you said, dodging a bullet with COVID. We were in the New York subway and Long Island Railroad.
Packed arenas.
Well, and the packed subways. We were trying to figure out how to get to Long Island. It was a freaking madhouse.
Isn't Long Island a madhouse like every day?
I don't know about Long Island so much. Manhattan is correct.
That was a great trip. We started here in Boston. We saw the Bruins play, and then I think we took a train the next day down to I think we had a day off, and then we took a train down to was it New Jersey first to see the Devils, and then down to D.C., and then back up to Long Island, and then I caught a Rangers game after that. But we were on Amtrak every single day, and the Long Island Railroad, and that was a fun trip.
No, I guess the games were great. I think we saw that was a game. Especially like that Caps game. I can't remember who they played now. Well, it was the Avalanche, because I think we saw the Avalanche
3 out of the 5 games, I think. Yeah.
But they were down like 3 goals, and we're neutral fans, right? So we don't really have a vested interest in either team winning or losing. But all the Caps fans were, some of them bailed early, and they ended up coming back and tying, I think, and winning that game in overtime. That was probably the best game we saw from an action standpoint. But it was funny to see how fair weather the fans are, because they missed out on an exciting comeback just because they were like, oh, this is bullshit, and they packed up and left town.
Typical. That's the way fans here in Boston are. We're passionate fans, no question about that. But if they're down by 3 or 4 goals, it's like people, we got to catch the subway and beat the traffic. I don't leave until it's 0-0-0 on the clock, because you never know what's going to happen in hockey, especially. That was a good game. I remember the bar after, was it the Devils game? We were watching the Patriots.
Yeah, that's when the Patriots and Titans played.
Right.
And Vrabel out Belichick.
That was when they eliminated them from the it was a playoff game, I believe.
Yeah.
And they eliminated them, and it was funny. And I have on my phone a video of the crowd. Now, outside of New England, nobody likes the Patriots. Everybody hated Tom Brady. Everybody hated the New England Patriots for a number of reasons. One, 6 Super Bowls, and 2, cheating. More than one occasion, apparently. Allegedly, I'm going to say, all right? Allegedly. But to be outside of New England with a bunch of fans that were in, I think it was New Jersey.
It was New Jersey.
It was New Jersey. That had no stake in either game. The cheers and the songs and the cursing that went on when the Patriots lost was crazy. It's a good thing I didn't have any Patriots gear on because I probably would have got mauled. But it was funny to see the reaction of these folks when the Patriots lost.
No, like I said, in all of our travels, you know, I've seen a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have experienced on my own. So, you know, I think that's one of the awesome things about our friendship, you know, is, you know, meeting you and then, you know, and again, keeping the friendship going after all these years. And I mean, just like thinking back on all the things all the places we've been, that, I mean, whether they're hockey games, baseball games, but those are a lot of the things that we've done. Probably wouldn't have ventured out on my own and done those. You know, we lived in Nashville. I went to hockey games in Nashville, but like, you know, I probably never would have made it to the Garden. I never would have made it to, you know, Anaheim to see those guys. You know, it's been really, really a fun ride to experience all those things.
We saw Springsteen a couple of times, and I remember a trip from Miami to Tampa. Do you remember that trip?
Yeah, we saw him. I think it was 3 shows and 3 nights. Pretty sure. I think we saw him in
3 shows and 4 nights.
4 nights.
Yeah.
It was. They were all in Florida. That was another one of those. Flew in. Yeah, but I remember, and I think I know what you're talking about. When we're driving down the Florida Turnpike.
That's it.
Again, so in case you haven't figured it out, Eric, I'm a car baby. So like, if I'm not driving a car, and I'm 40 years old, it's still the same. If I'm not driving a car, I will probably fall asleep. So I think we had seen the shows in, did we see them like in Orlando and Tampa, and we're heading to Miami?
We went Orlando, Miami, Tampa.
Okay. But we were heading to Miami for that show. So we're flying down the Florida Turnpike, and I'm passed out in the passenger seat, and I wake up to, oh shit. As I sit up in the passenger seat, I see this like black Mercedes like spinning in front of us on the turnpike. He goes like across the median, which is, I mean, it's all grass, but it's probably 4 lanes wide. And then he goes across the other 2 lanes in northbound traffic and didn't hit anything.
Wow.
Right. But apparently, and I was like, how fast were we going? And Gerry was doing 100 miles an hour when this dude blew a tire right in front of us.
I was doing 100 and he passed me when he blew the tire. So he had to be doing $110. And I've never driven that fast again. I don't think I ever drove that fast in my life. That was probably the first and only time I did that.
It was very atypical behavior, having ridden in a car with you on multiple occasions. I did not expect you to say 100 miles an hour when I asked that question.
It was I forget the car we rented, but it was a great car. It had speed, man. But this guy shot across the median, like he said, and there were cars on the other side. And how he, by the grace of God, just guided him in the middle of this traffic and right into the ditch. It didn't look like he probably didn't get hurt because the way the car ended up, it wasn't on its roof. I mean, he just talk about lucky, but I'm sure first he said it and then he did it because that scared the hell out of me. So,
the other like funny part of that trip is that was later on in that trip when we were like still in Orlando or going through Orlando. There was like, I remember there was like a 4 or 5 car little melee that like happened right in front of us, and we ended up driving through it because like all the cars like they like bounced into each other like in the middle lane and then spread out and like ended up going to both shoulders. And I thought that would be the most interesting thing that happened on the road that day.
Yeah,
that's always the thing, you know, when you're on a trip or whatever, and you're like, well, that's got to be the craziest thing that's going to happen today. And then next thing you know.
Oh, yeah.
So it's always great to see you. And any final comments? Any other crazy stories you can think of that we didn't cover?
Well, I'm sure I could think of more, but just gives you a reason to drag me back on here again.
Oh, you are welcome anytime, my friend. We'd love to have you. Definitely going to have you back on in a future episode. Eric, any final comments?
Roll with the changes.
It's Another Sunday Podcast. It's produced by Gerry and Eric. Technical advisor Tom Bilodeau. Music composed and performed by Tom Blaze. Check out Tom's website. Hang on. Damn it. And I'm reading I should just do it off the top of my head. Eric, any last words? Eric, any final word? Oh, I'm sorry. I had you all on mute.
You could.
Jesus, this is what happens when you have 2 guests in a night. Stand by. I'm making more work for myself, guys. This is funny to you and to me. But next weekend when I go to edit it, I'll be throwing cats out the window. Eric, any final words?
Roll with the changes.
It's Another Sunday Podcast. It's produced by Eric and Gerry. Technical advisor, Tom Bilodeau. Music composed and performed by Tom Blaze. Check out Tom's YouTube channel at Tom Blaze. Our thanks to tonight's guest, Mike McCoy, for sharing stories of him and I on the road. That's going to do it for this episode of It's Another Sunday Podcast. Thanks for listening.